Before we dive in, I feel it's important to put a face to a name, to humanize this course a little. I'd like to introduce myself and share more about my story and my why. My name is Joe, and I'm a recovering gambling addict with over a year of clean time. I've been through inpatient, PHP, IOP, DBT, and still attend GA weekly while maintaining additional therapy sessions 2 to 3 times a week. And what I noticed throughout all of that is that most professionals, therapists, caseworkers, entire treatment programs, family members even, are years behind when it comes to understanding how gambling works today. Most don't know what a parlay is. They don't know that clients can cash out mid-game. They've never heard of same-game parlays, live bets, or micro bets. Even how options trading plays a role in this, and most importantly, they don't understand gambling culture and the strength that it has. And because of that, clients walk into therapy feeling like they're speaking a completely different language. I created this course to change that. I didn't start gambling in a chaotic way. I'd been to casinos before, played some blackjack, slots, nothing out of control. The problem didn't really start until I was introduced to my first bookie. Because back then, sports betting wasn't legal in Illinois, so you had to go through a bookie. And the thing about bookies is that you gamble on credit. So you settle up at the end of the week, win or lose, but you don't have to put money up front. At first, it was a fun way to stay engaged with college football, but the second I started making real money at work, the bets got bigger. I'd bet one game, then two, then an entire slate from 11 a.m. till the Hawaii game at midnight. And then I'd wake up and do it all over again on NFL football. And that was just the weekends. I'd win and double down. I'd lose and chase. That became the pattern. I'd say, let me just win it back. And the next thing I know, I was down 5 figures trying to break even. Eventually, I was betting with 5 different bookies. When one account was tapped out, I'd just start with another. And when sports betting became legal in Illinois, I thought maybe it would actually help me. There was no more chasing a guy for payouts, no more waiting until Monday to settle. But I was wrong. I took the same behaviors to the sports betting apps, only now I could deposit and withdraw instantly. I started betting on anything: minor league tennis, overseas basketball, teams whose names I can't even pronounce and don't know where they are. There were days I had 3 phones open, streaming games in Asia just to get to 9 a.m. at work, then bet all day until midnight. It didn't matter what the sport was, I just needed action. And still, I told myself it wasn't a problem. There were so many times I tried to quit. I'd delete the apps, I'd self-exclude, I'd use gambling blockers, but I always knew that I'd be back. I'd just sign up on a new site or go across state lines or use a VPN. The tools that were supposed to help me gamble responsibly felt more like a legal checkbox than something that actually worked. I wasn't quitting, I was just pausing until the next dopamine hit or until I could get access to some money. I'd convinced myself I was managing it, but deep down I was completely out of control. Eventually, I lost everything: money, confidence, direction, my career. I was borrowing from friends and family, taking out payday loans, maxing credit cards. I didn't even realize it at the time, but I was also severely depressed. I wake up exhausted no matter how much sleep I got. I stopped eating, I lost weight. I thought about ending my life more than once, and the scary part is I actually had a plan. That was the moment I knew I needed help. Yet it still didn't stop me. I didn't know how to ask for help. I was too insecure. I thought I'd be cut off from my family for lying and whatever other excuse I told myself. Even when I had a plan to end my life, that still would not stop me. Frankly, the reason I ended up stopping was because I got found out. The web of lies and missing money were a house of cards waiting to collapse. And that's the real problem. I'm thankful every day that I got caught, and honestly, when I was gambling, I wish it had happened much sooner. I went to inpatient treatment and was diagnosed with depression and gambling addiction. And while the support helped save my life, I also noticed something troubling. No one really understood gambling, and not just sports betting. I mean modern gambling or gambling culture. Not the therapist, not the psychiatrist, not the intake team, not even the curriculum. I would sit in group therapy and barely speak because I felt so isolated that nobody would understand what a live prop bet is or what cashing out meant. I did most of my processing at night with my roommate, who I still keep in touch with to this day. That's when I realized how massive the gap is between modern gambling and traditional addiction training. Again, that's why this course exists. This course isn't about teaching treatment techniques. It's about helping you understand what gambling actually looks like in 2025. It's about recognizing the language your clients use, understanding the ways they hide their addiction, and being prepared with questions and tools that reflect the reality of online gambling. It's the kind of insight you can't get from a textbook. It's the insight you can only get from lived experience, and not just my own, but from the 400 plus members in my Discord community, the messages I receive daily on social media, which, by the way, can be a pretty dangerous place for someone. You'd think I'd have a ton of well-wishers and support, which I do get a lot of, but mostly private because this issue is so isolating. But a majority of the public comments are, "You're only one win away from the big one. You're a quitter. Gambling addiction isn't real. Stop blaming other people because you don't have discipline and self-control." Gambling culture is a huge issue in and of itself. I know I'm fortunate to have had the treatment and support that saved my life, but many people don't get that same opportunity. They go to GA meetings and feel out of place. They talk to therapists who don't understand modern gambling, and they're constantly told to just stop betting. I believe it's what more providers need if we're going to keep up with this wave of gambling addiction that is only going to get worse. This course is designed to fill that gap and provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to truly understand what's happening with today's gamblers. I'm grateful to be here and to share this with you. I hope that my story resonates and that you can take what you've learned and use it to make a difference in your own practice and in the lives of those who need help. Welcome to Understanding Gambling Addiction, a guide for families. My name's Joe, and I'm here to walk you through what gambling addiction really looks like in today's world, a world I lived in for a very long time. If you're here, there's a good chance you love someone who's caught in it, and you're probably feeling confused, frustrated, maybe even helpless. This course was built for you. My goal is to help you see what's really going on, not just the behaviors, but the mindset underneath. Because until you understand how they think, nothing they do is going to make sense at all. I also want to mention this because I know my parents ask themselves every day still, what did they do wrong? The answer is nothing. You didn't ask to be thrown into this chaos, and you didn't create this chaos. Frankly, most of you are literal victims, whether it be from theft or emotional abuse, and I understand you're tired, and I'm sorry for that. But I hope you find a little solace in understanding the mind of a gambler. Now, this presentation certainly has a sports betting lean, but whether it's sports betting, crypto casinos, online casinos, or even options trading, they're just different chapters of the same book. Over the next hour or so, we'll explore how gambling has evolved, especially with online platforms and sports betting apps that make it accessible 24/7. You'll learn how these platforms are engineered to be addictive, how they keep people hooked, and why quitting isn't as simple as just stop. We'll also look closely at the psychology behind the addiction, how a gambler justifies things, what they hide, what they fear, and why the lies feel so personal. This course won't give you all the answers, but it will give you clarity. And sometimes clarity is what breaks the cycle. I want to be clear. I'm not here to give you therapy advice or clinical treatment strategies. I'm not a licensed professional. What I bring is lived experience. Somebody who has been through every level of care, including inpatient treatment all the way down to outpatient therapy, and I still go to GA meetings. And I've also talked to hundreds of families going through the same thing you are. Gambling addiction doesn't just affect the person placing bets. It affects everyone around them. You deserve answers, you deserve peace, and this course is here to help you get both. Let's begin. It's easy to think that addiction is just about behavior, about stopping the gambling, ending the cycles of loss and regret. But understanding what's going on in the gambler's mind is essential. Addiction isn't just about money, it's about the emotions, the thought patterns, and the underlying psychological drivers. Knowing this isn't just important for therapists or clinicians or family, it's crucial for anyone who wants to understand and help someone with gambling addiction. Family members and peers who aren't in a treatment role need to know this just as much as the healthcare providers so that they can relate to these behaviors and so they don't unintentionally enable them or become frustrated by the cycle of promises and relapses. Gambling isn't what it used to be. It's faster, quieter, and it's exploding. Online apps and platforms have transformed gambling from an occasional activity into a constant, accessible presence. Today's gambling experience is designed to be frictionless, immersive, and available 24/7 right in your pocket. In 2024, Americans wagered nearly $150 billion on sports. That's almost a 24% increase in a single year. Revenue from sports betting alone, over $13.7 billion. And state governments collected almost $3 billion in taxes from that. That's money being lost by people. And for a growing number of them, it's not just entertainment, it's destruction. Problem gambling helpline calls in Virginia rose 973% from 2019 to 2023. New Jersey saw a 277% increase. This isn't an isolated issue, it's a public health crisis. A 2023 Rutgers study found that 6% of adults in New Jersey are at high risk for problem gambling. That's nearly 1 in 17 people and 3 times higher than the national average of 1 to 2%. There's also massive demographic disparities. The rates are significantly higher for men under 25, and gambling disproportionately impacts Black and Hispanic populations. And lastly, there's a higher prevalence among low-income residents. Globally, the World Health Organization now recognizes gambling disorder as a public health concern. In Europe, countries are already acting. Some, like Belgium, have banned gambling ads entirely. The UK has restrictions on gambling advertisements during sports. And Norway has state-sponsored gambling monopolies with strict limits. And even some of the EU has banned microbetting altogether. Microbetting, if you're not familiar, is the act of betting on single plays, like the next pitch, the next foul ball, or even the speed of the pitch. It's not just a bet, it's a dopamine slot machine in your pocket, because bets only take seconds to settle, like the spin of a slot machine or a roulette wheel. Here's the scale of the problem. The US gambling industry pulled in over $71 billion last year. Meanwhile, consumers, real people, lost over $100 billion. And very little of that went to support services or prevention. Currently, there's no federal funding for gambling support services like there is for other addictions, and states are just starting to realize the issue. And frankly, they're scrambling and in catch-up mode. Think about that. Almost $30 billion more was lost than was actually made from the casinos. The lack of funding and the government being behind has a much bigger effect than you might think. For example, treatment centers are behind as well. They're in catch-up mode. The reality is that not everyone who works in addiction treatment understands gambling. When a gambler walks into a treatment center and begins to talk about their experiences with sportsbooks or online casinos, the clinician might not understand the language, the drive, or the compulsion. The same goes for most family members. This makes it harder for your loved one to be honest, whether it be with their treatment providers or with their family. They might hesitate to open up because they're talking to someone who's never experienced this form of addiction themselves. And that's why it's so important to have a deeper understanding of what gambling addiction really looks like, so you can more effectively communicate and resonate with your loved one. On a healthcare standpoint, my very first therapist only treated me for depression because I insisted I didn't have a gambling problem. Had he been able to ask the right questions, maybe that would have made the difference. Don't get me wrong, I recognize it was still on me to be forthcoming. And to give you background, I've completed an inpatient program, a PHP program, and an IOP program. I still continue with DBT therapy and GA meetings weekly. Throughout those programs, I've worked with several therapists, psychiatrists, etc., and not a single one was a gambler. And very few knew much about sports, which is totally fine. Even my buddies who gamble, I didn't really share anything with them because I didn't feel like I could. I didn't think they'd understand the grip because I know that they can gamble responsibly. But I can't tell you how isolating it was and how it made me not want to take my treatment seriously because they'll have no idea what I'm talking about. If you can talk the talk and understand what a gambling addict is talking about, they will feel more comfortable and more open. Finally, understanding gambling today requires a grasp of Gambling 101. Specifically the online nature of it. What used to be a visit to the casino, which don't get me wrong is still an issue by the way, is now a swipe on a phone screen. And not only is it easier to access, but it's also easier to hide. Social media plays a huge role here with influencers glamorizing gambling as a quick route to riches. Pay attention. And I never really noticed how often they advertise it, but you can't watch TV, drive on the highway, or walk down the street without seeing Jamie Foxx glamorizing gambling with BetMGM. And I even recently saw an ad that was in the form of a cartoon with The Rock convincing someone to gamble. The man said, "I only have $300 left." And The Rock replied with, "That's okay. When you make your first deposit, we'll give you a $1,500 bonus." Now, we don't have to be marketing experts to see the message. Gambling is cool. And The Rock, this big muscular figure, essentially intimidates this man. This creates a whole new layer of complexity when it comes to treatment and family providing support. You have to understand how this works in order to resonate and connect with your loved one effectively. It's not just about stopping the bet, it's about understanding the whole culture, the apps, the community, and how these factors influence behavior. Understanding gambling culture is one of the most important pieces of gambling because it's evolved from a solitary activity to a social identity marker among peer groups. Friends don't just gather to watch games anymore. They gather primarily to bet on it. So understanding the culture is crucial. For example, I was recently at one of my favorite wing spots in Chicago, and they have several TVs that were playing the Cubs game and the Stanley Cup finals were on. A table behind me of six men in their 20s weren't paying attention to any of the TVs. They were all huddled up around a cell phone watching a game and going nuts after whatever happened. Clearly, they had been betting on it. Now, imagine being the guy who is trying to stop gambling in that group or knows that they have a problem. Think about the pressure he must be feeling to want to join in on the action. Again, gambling has become a status symbol within peer groups. I'm excited to share that today I'm about 15 months bet free. My last bet was 4/16/24. I still attend weekly GA meetings and see a therapist who specializes in DBT and actually understands gambling, plus an additional therapist. I also manage my own social media platforms on TikTok and Instagram and manage a Discord with 400 people that seems to be growing by the minute. These all play a huge role in my recovery. In fact, sharing my story and being open for the first time in my life, especially on a public platform, has been such a great feeling because I know there's others like me who don't know where to go and don't know what to do. I have two missions in my life. One, be the best father to my daughter, and two, help as many people as I can by any means necessary. As we move forward in this course, my goal is to help you see gambling addiction through the lens of a gambler, so you can better understand, empathize, and ultimately help those struggling. Whether you're a peer or a family member, knowing the full picture is the first step in truly making a difference. Let's dive in.